My heart aches, Lord, as I recall the terrifying stillness that fell upon Amara's vibrant world. One moment, she was laughter at the breakfast table, a beacon of pure, unadulterated joy. The next, a cruel, unseen force snatched her into the terrifying abyss of an acute cerebral shutdown, leaving her frail body lifeless on a hospital bed, entangled in a web of tubes and blinking monitors. The sterile air, thick with antiseptic, and the dull hum of machines, offered no comfort, only the crushing monotony of routine beeping that mocked Elijah's desperate hope. His large, calloused hands, accustomed to shaping steel and pouring foundations, now dwarfed hers as he cradled her tiny, limp one, feeling a weight heavier than any girder he had ever lifted. Doctors spoke in hushed, technical whispers of guesses, of might wake up or might not, their words painting a grim portrait of a life slipping away. Elijah's devotion was undeniable, a raw, primal desperation to stay by his precious baby girl, but even his fierce love felt powerless against the relentless chipping away of time, and with it, hope. Into this sacred space of grief and fragile hope, an uninvited, jarring presence arrived. Devin Langston, a billionaire tech mogul, a self-proclaimed genius, owner of vast hospitals, yet utterly devoid of genuine heart. He was a man with too much money, too many superficial toys, and a chilling smugness that preceded him. He had read about Amara's plight in a newspaper, not with empathy, but with the cold, calculating eye of opportunity. He offered Elijah a miracle package: top international neurologists, AI-powered diagnostics, experimental procedures, all at zero cost. His condescending chuckle echoed off the sterile walls like a gunshot when Elijah, in his raw vulnerability, asked the only question that mattered. "Will it bring her back?" Langston's glinting eyes, hidden behind designer sunglasses, saw only a problem to be bought and fixed. "Black boy, I know how to make your daughter wake up," he sneered, his voice dripping with superiority. "Trust me, we'll give her the best tech money can buy. We'll upgrade her brain like an iPhone." Elijah's face hardened, the muscles in his jaw twitching with suppressed fury. He slowly, deliberately, placed Amara's hand back on the blanket. "She's not a machine," he stated, his voice low and guttural, charged with a father's fierce protectiveness. "She's a little girl." Langston simply waved him away, dismissing Elijah's pain as mere emotion, a weakness that science wins. Yet, Amara remained unstirred, untouched by the flashing lights of his expensive machines, the virtual simulations, or even the gentle placement of a VR headset over her closed eyes. Day after day, nothing worked. One by one, the specialists quietly, shamefully, flew out, leaving behind only the stark reality of their invoices and the silent, unblinking monitors. By Sunday evening, Langston himself stopped coming, his fleeting interest exhausted by a problem that money couldn't simply conquer. But Elijah, bruised and weary, remained, a silent sentinel by his daughter's side, clinging to hope in the hushed, antiseptic air, a father's love refusing to abandon its precious cargo. Just past midnight, when the sterile hospital corridors hummed with the quiet despair of a fading night, and Elijah's soul was utterly worn to a husk from endless vigil, a soft tap at the window startled him. "Mr. Martin," a nurse whispered, her voice a hushed intrusion into the profound silence. "There's a boy here says he wants to help." "A boy?" Elijah stepped out cautiously, his heart a raw knot of exhaustion and disbelief. "What boy?" She pointed towards the lobby, and there, a sight that defied all logic, all hospital protocols, settled into Elijah's weary gaze. Sitting alone on a cold bench was a barefoot black child, no older than 11. He wore an oversized frayed gray hoodie, his jeans torn, his face smudged with dirt, a stark, almost ethereal contrast to the polished antiseptic environment. But it was his eyes, deep, clear, and utterly still, that truly caught Elijah's breath. They held an ancient wisdom, a quiet certainty that seemed to pierce through the layers of despair. The boy stood up as Elijah approached, nodding respectfully, his composure unnerving. "Are you Amara's father?" he asked, his voice soft, yet carrying an undeniable resonance. "Yes," Elijah said, hesitating, a flicker of bewildered hope mixing with his profound weariness. Who are you? The boy didn't answer directly, bypassing the mundane for the mystical. Instead, he simply stated, I know how to help her. Elijah blinked, his sleep-deprived mind struggling to process the impossible. What did you say? I know how to wake her up. The words weren't loud, they weren't arrogant, they weren't even laced with the fragile hope that Elijah clung to. They were inexplicably certain. Elijah, already sleep-deprived and emotionally worn, sighed, the sound heavy with resignation. You're just a kid, man. The boy nodded, completely unfazed. But sometimes it takes someone small to remind people of big things. Elijah ran a hand over his tired face. Listen, I appreciate the thought, but doctors couldn't help her. A billionaire couldn't help her. I don't think. The boy interrupted him softly, his voice a bomb. She's not lost. She's listening from far away, but she doesn't know if it's safe to come back. Elijah's mouth went dry. The boy, this impossible child, spoke of Amara's internal world with an intimacy that sent shivers down his spine. The boy stepped forward, his eyes holding Elijah's. She needs something the hospital doesn't have. Elijah whispered, What? And then came the words that would shatter Elijah's carefully constructed walls of strength. She needs your pain, your truth, the words you've hidden behind strength. Elijah was stunned, utterly floored. Who are you? He demanded again, but the boy didn't answer. Instead, he simply asked, Can I sit with her? Every rational instinct screamed at Elijah to say no, to dismiss this strange, barefoot child. But something deeper, something old and aching within him, a primal yearning for any shred of hope, nodded. All right, he whispered, a silent surrender to the unbelievable. The boy entered Amara's room, a fragile yet powerful presence. He stood beside her, placing one hand lightly, gently on her head. His lips moved silently for a moment, a private communion known only to him and perhaps to Amara's distant spirit. Then he turned to Elijah, his gaze holding profound understanding. Now what she knows you're here, but she needs to know why you're still here. The truth of those words resonated in Elijah's very bones. Elijah stared at his daughter, Amara, his heart a clenched, agonizing knot in his chest. His lips parted, trembling, and then, like a dam finally breaking, the words came. Raw, unfiltered, the truth he hadn't dared to utter aloud since the very day she collapsed. I wasn't there, baby, he whispered, his voice a ragged gasp of pain. I was at work. I missed your breakfast. I missed your smile. I missed your warning signs. His voice cracked, splintering with the weight of unshed tears. I should have seen something was wrong. I should have been home earlier. I should have held you longer that morning. I should have told you how proud I was. Tears, hot and heavy, streamed down his cheeks, falling onto her pink blanket, each drop a testament to a father's profound regret and boundless love. He gripped her small, unresponsive hand, shaking with desperate urgency. Please, Amara, come back. I'll never miss another second. I promise. A suffocating silence followed, broken only by the frantic beat of his own heart. And then a miracle, faint yet undeniably real. The heart monitor, that cruel arbiter of Amara's fragile life, blipped. Just a little faster. Just once. The nurse, standing nearby, gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Elijah's eyes, wide with disbelief and a surging, fragile hope, blinked. Did you see that? He choked out, barely daring to breathe. I did, Isaiah confirmed, his voice calm, steady, and utterly unwavering. She's listening. And then, just like that, the mysterious boy turned to leave, his mission seemingly accomplished. Wait! Elijah cried out, his voice hoarse, a desperate plea for answers. What's your name? The boy paused, his hand already on the door, a fleeting glimpse of another world. They call me Isaiah, he said, his voice soft, almost a whisper, yet resonating with ancient wisdom. I'll be back tomorrow. And with that, he walked into the hallway, barefoot and silent, vanishing as if he belonged to a realm beyond the sterile confines of the hospital, a messenger from a place where hope was not just a wish, but a certainty. Elijah turned back to Amara, his gaze fixed on her. And there it was. Her fingers, those tiny precious fingers that had been so still for so long, twitched slightly. Not a flicker of a muscle, but a deliberate movement, a whisper from the other side. And for the very first time in a week, the machines, those cold, unfeeling arbiters of her condition, blinked with a different rhythm. Not the dull, routine beat of despair, but the vibrant, pulsating rhythm of undeniable hope. The silent descent had been broken. The arrogant wealth had failed. Now a father's raw, broken truth, whispered into the quiet, had begun to call his daughter home. As Amara's tiny fingers twitched, a faint echo of life returning, Isaiah, this enigmatic child, confirmed the miracle with quiet certainty. "She's listening," he murmured, his voice a gentle reassurance that cut through the hospital's sterile hum. Then, with the profound simplicity of an ancient prophet, he turned to leave, his mission seemingly fulfilled. "Wait," Elijah pleaded, his voice raw, hoarse with desperation. "What's your name?" The boy paused at the door, a fleeting shadow, and offered only a whisper. "They call me Isaiah. I'll be back tomorrow." And just like that, he vanished into the silent hallway, leaving Elijah reeling, clutching at the fragile thread of hope he had so unexpectedly been given. The hours that followed stretched into a new dawn, filled with an agonizing mixture of exhaustion and exhilarated anticipation. Elijah stayed glued to Amara's bedside, his back aching, his eyes burning. For some time during the long, hushed hours of the night, Amara's left index finger had twitched again. This time there was no monitor to confirm it, no medical prompt, just a faint, fleeting movement, a whisper from the other side, real only to him. He was her witness. As daylight spilled through the hospital blinds, a new nurse, oblivious to the night's sacred encounter, rolled her eyes when Elijah spoke of the boy. "No visitor was signed in," she declared, tapping her tablet. "No child on the security footage either. Are you sure you weren't dreaming?" Elijah said nothing, his gaze fixed on the small pink blanket that now rose and fell with a more discernible rhythm over Amara's chest. He knew. Isaiah had been real. The moment that boy had touched Amara's head, something had shifted in the room, not just physically, but spiritually. It was as if a window had opened in the universe, letting in a current of inexplicable grace. Still, Elijah wrestled with the mystery. Where did Isaiah go? Where did he come from? The boy had spoken with an unnerving familiarity, like someone who had known Amara her whole life, like someone who had known him. Not the grease-stained, burden-laden man he had become, but the man who used to believe that love was louder than fear. He hadn't been that man in years. He had tried to be a provider, a protector, but in his relentless pursuit of security after his wife's death, he had stopped listening to Amara, not truly. She loved stories, not flashy cartoons, but old myths, the ones he used to tell her on late Sunday nights when her mother was still alive. She would curl up next to him, whispering, "Tell me again about the girl who whispered to the moon." But after the accident that took his wife, Elijah had buried those stories, along with his grief, under longer work hours, a silent, unyielding sorrow. He stopped singing, stopped dreaming. Amara noticed, growing quieter, until now, she was utterly silent. Until Isaiah came. That afternoon, Elijah did something he hadn't done in years. He prayed. Not with eloquent words or theological pronouncements, but with raw, cracked honesty. "God, if you're there, if you're still listening, don't let this be it." And then, like a breath caught in the lungs of the world, the door creaked again. Elijah turned, and there he was. Isaiah, standing in the doorway, same frayed hoodie, same bare feet, same impossibly calm eyes. "I said I'd come back," he simply stated. Elijah nearly ran to him, a torrent of questions spilling from his lips. "Where do you go? Who are you?" "I go where I'm needed," the boy answered, his voice soft, ancient. "And I'm someone who remembers what others forget." Isaiah walked to Amara's bed, gently placed a hand on her wrist and closed his eyes. "She's closer today," he whispered, and Elijah's heart leaped. "Closer. She's been listening," Isaiah affirmed. "Your voice reached her yesterday, but now she needs something else." "Tell me," Elijah pleaded, desperate. "She needs the song." Elijah's face twisted in confusion. "Song?" Isaiah looked up, his gaze piercing. "The one you used to sing to her before the fire, before the quiet." Elijah stumbled back, as if he'd been punched. There was only one song, a lullaby not recorded anywhere, not shared, just his voice in the dark, carrying the melody of a story from his childhood, one his grandmother used to sing when he was scared. "There's light in the shadows and stars in the rain. Hold on, little dreamer, you'll fly once again." He hadn't sung it since the day they buried his wife. His throat tightened, choked with emotion. I can't." "Yes, you can," Isaiah said softly, his voice a gentle, insistent current. "Because she still remembers it. And so do you." The hospital room seemed to fade from Elijah's eyes, replaced by a vivid, tender memory. A tiny living room with soft yellow curtains, a little girl on his lap, her head on his chest, their world warm and whole. He blinked hard, the memory shattering, but his heart remembered. So he sat beside Amara's bed and cleared his throat. It cracked, his voice trembled, but he began, "There's light in the shadows and stars in the rain." He paused, emotion overwhelming him, but Isaiah nodded again, an unspoken encouragement. And Elijah did. "Hold on, little dreamer, you'll fly once again." A long, low beep came from the monitor. Elijah panicked, but then he saw it. Her heart rate was rising, not dangerously, but steadily, a rhythm of awakening. Then her fingers twitched, once, twice. The nurse on duty gasped. "She's reacting to the music." Isaiah looked at Elijah, his eyes shining. "You gave her something to come back to. Now she knows the way." Elijah wiped his eyes, a profound question burning in his soul. "Why are you helping us? You don't know us." Isaiah stepped away from the bed, his form almost shimmering. "You're wrong. I do know her." Elijah stiffened, confused. Isaiah took a breath, his gaze sweeping around the sterile room, filling it with an invisible, poignant history. "Not her name, but her heart. Because I was a child once who cried in a bed like this. Lone. Afraid. No one ever came for me. No songs. No hands holding mine. I waited and waited, but no one told me to come home." Silence choked the air, thick with unspoken pain and ancient promise. "I promised if I ever got the chance to change that, I would." Elijah fell to his knees beside him, overwhelmed by the revelation. You're like an angel." Isaiah didn't answer. He simply turned back to Amara and whispered, "You've been found." Then he stepped toward the door. Elijah called out desperately, "Will you come again tomorrow?" The boy turned slightly, his gaze soft, knowing. "If she needs me, yes. But I think your voice is stronger now." "Wait." Elijah ran to the hallway, but just like before, the boy had vanished. This time, Elijah asked the receptionist, checked the security cameras. No trace. But none of that mattered, because when he returned to the room, Amara's eyes were fluttering beneath her lids. She wasn't awake, not fully, but she wasn't gone. And for the first time in a week, Elijah smiled, a true, radiant smile of hope reborn. The ICU floor, usually a symphony of muted alarms and hushed urgency, was now unnaturally quiet, holding something profoundly holy in its air. Not the sterile cold of medicine, but something soft, something warm, a palpable presence. Elijah had barely blinked since the night before, his voice worn to a raw husk from singing the same song again and again. He sang not because someone told him to, but because he saw, with every fiber of his being, how each precious note brought his daughter, Amara, closer. The monitors didn't lie. Her brain waves had stabilized, her heart was strong, beating with a steady, hopeful rhythm. And then, at precisely 6:02 a.m., Amara's right hand, the one that had been limp and lifeless for 7 agonizing days, reached for his. No one had coached her, no reflex test, no external stimulus. She simply reached. Elijah crumbled, sobbing into her blanket, tears of pure, unadulterated relief washing over him. It was a movement that should have been impossible, a movement that defied every scientific explanation. But Elijah no longer cared about science. He only cared about the raw, undeniable power of faith and a barefoot boy who had taught him to believe again. Dr. Lester, standing by the window, flipped through her notes for the third time that hour. Her voice a murmur of bewildered skepticism. "We don't understand this," she confessed, her tone an equal blend of amazement and scientific doubt. "Neurologically, nothing explains this kind of spontaneous recovery in the absence of medication or surgical intervention." The nurse beside her, equally baffled, simply asked, "So what do we chart it as?" Dr. Lester hesitated, then whispered, almost to herself, "Call it an anomaly." But Elijah, from the corner, gently holding Amara's hand, offered a soft smile. "You call it what you want," he said, his voice filled with a quiet knowing, "but I know what I saw, what I heard." Dr. Lester raised an eyebrow, a flicker of curiosity in her gaze. "You think it's the boy?" Elijah nodded slowly, his conviction unwavering. "I don't just think it. I know it." That afternoon, Elijah stepped outside for the first time in 3 days, and the world felt utterly transformed. Everything felt different. The sun, once a harsh, blinding light, now felt like a warm promise. He walked to the nearest convenience store not for food, but for something very specific, a small spiral notebook. One he could fill with songs, with stories, with truth. 'Cause Isaiah was right. Amara needed her father's voice, not the one buried under bills and burdens, but the one that told her she was loved, safe, and never truly alone. Elijah wasn't going to lose her again, not to silence, not to grief. Back at the hospital, Elijah found something taped to Amara's window, a small, folded note, written in crooked blue pen. He opened it with trembling fingers. "Sometimes the healing comes before the waking. Don't give up on her just because her eyes are closed. She hears you. Keep singing. Isaiah." Elijah pressed the paper to his heart, a physical manifestation of a spiritual truth. Isaiah had come again, not in flesh, but in presence, a profound whisper across the veil. The hospital had no record of anyone entering or exiting. No staff had seen him. Yet he had been there. Amara's breathing changed after that. It deepened, became more rhythmic, less labored, less mechanical. Her color returned, a vibrant flush of life. And then late that night she spoke again, a fragile whisper, a soft murmur but unmistakable. "Daddy." Elijah dropped the notebook, his legs going weak with disbelief and overflowing love. He rushed to the bed and cupped her face in his trembling hands. "Amara, Amara, can you hear me, baby?" She blinked slowly, her lips barely moving. "You came back." "I never left," he whispered, his voice breaking, tears rolling freely down his own cheeks. A single tear, silent and pure, rolled down hers. "Where's the boy?" she asked, her voice soft. Elijah froze. You saw him." She nodded slowly. "He said he was the echo that found me when I was floating and couldn't see. He sang until I heard your voice again." She closed her eyes, a faint smile on her lips. "He held my hand. He said, 'Your daddy's waiting on the other side of the dark.' And I followed the light." Elijah felt the weight of her words settle into his soul like a stone into water. "He led you back," Amara whispered. "He smelled like dust and bread. He laughed like sunlight. He said his name was Isaiah." Tears rolled freely now down Elijah's face. "Sweetheart," Elijah choked, "Isaiah is." He didn't know how to finish that sentence. An angel? A messenger? A miracle? Maybe all three. But Amara simply smiled faintly. "He said he didn't need wings to fly. Just faith." The next morning news had already spread. The hospital buzzed with a quiet uproar, whispered conversations in hushed hallways. Amara's chart didn't make sense anymore. There were no medications listed to explain the recovery, no clinical trial. Just a girl who shouldn't have woken up, but did, because of a voice and a boy no one could find. Outside room 317, a young intern sat scrolling through security footage, rewinding, fast-forwarding, zooming in. But Isaiah wasn't there. Not once, not in any frame. The cameras showed Elijah singing, crying, begging, but the hallway that Isaiah walked through, empty every single time. The intern leaned back, goosebumps rising on his arms. That boy, he whispered to himself, was never on camera. Meanwhile, in Amara's room, Elijah and Amara were holding hands, watching cartoons. She had color in her cheeks, a smile on her lips. Sleep still pulled at her eyes, but life had returned in full. "Tell me the story again," she said. "What story?" Elijah asked, momentarily bewildered. "The girl who whispered to the moon." Elijah blinked. He hadn't told that story since his wife's passing. But she smiled and he knew. Isaiah had told her. She hadn't forgotten after all. Neither had he. That night, Elijah didn't leave the hospital. He couldn't. Not yet. He stayed awake in a chair beside Amara's bed, notebook in hand, writing page after page. Stories, songs, prayers. He would never again let silence be his language. And just before midnight, he stepped into the hallway for some air. The wing was empty, lights dimmed, and then, out of nowhere, a voice, soft, familiar. "You did good, Mr. Elijah." He turned and there he was. Barefoot, same coat, same dirt-streaked cheeks, but this time smiling wide. "Isaiah," Elijah breathed. The boy nodded. "She doesn't need me anymore. She asked for you." "I know," Isaiah said. "But now she has you. That's better." Elijah's eyes welled with emotion. "Will I ever see you again?" Isaiah tilted his head. "Maybe. Or maybe someone else will." "What do I owe you?" Elijah whispered. Isaiah's smile softened, radiating a gentle peace. "Tell her stories every night, even when she's grown. Never stop singing." And then he turned, walked toward the end of the hallway, and vanished. No door open, no sound, just gone. But Elijah didn't chase him. He just stood there, still, utterly full, a heart overflowing with a new purpose born from pain, illuminated by an unexpected grace. 3 months had passed since Amara Reeves woke from the coma that had stolen her light. 3 months since a barefoot boy with dust on his skin and stars in his voice led her back from the very edge of darkness. Elijah hadn't stopped telling the story since, not because it made logical sense, but because it mattered with a profound, undeniable truth. He'd recounted it to reporters, to the hospital board, to skeptical doctors whose clipboards and narrowed eyes tried to fit a miracle into a scientific chart. He even told it to himself in the quiet middle of the night, when the insidious tendrils of fear crept back in, whispering doubts. But most importantly, he told it to Amara every single night, a bedtime ritual woven with love and wonder, and she remembered every word. The doctors, still grappling with the inexplicable, called it spontaneous neural reintegration. They muttered about an idiopathic cerebral shutdown. Big, complex words that danced evasively around the truth, words that simply didn't fit into the raw, visceral story that Elijah had witnessed and Amara had felt. No study, no EEG, no medical journal entry could explain Isaiah's laugh. His touch, the way he smelled like bread and hope. Amara remembered what he said. "You're not lost, you're just not finished yet." Amara started therapy the week after she was discharged, her steps shaky, her tiny hands trembling when she held a crayon. Yet her will was unshakable. Each time her legs gave out, she whispered one name, Isaiah. Each time she wanted to give up, she hummed a tune, a lullaby Elijah had never taught her, but Isaiah had. And Elijah, his heart overflowing, would sit by the piano every single night after therapy, playing that simple, profound melody until she danced again, her spirit soaring free. Elijah, fundamentally transformed by the experience, began to shed the trappings of his former life. He sold the Range Rover first, then the lake house in Colorado, then the last of his trust fund investments. He told no one, felt no need to. For the first time in his life he wasn't buying anything. He was building, with time, with words, with truth. He used the money to launch a program called Voices at Dawn, a free art and music center dedicated to children in underserved communities, especially those navigating trauma, illness, or grief. Its slogan, a beacon of hope, read, "Where silence ends and healing begins." The very first mural that graced the center's wall was painted by Amara herself, a child with a coat too big and shoes too small, a hand extended from the darkness, offering a song. And beneath it, in bold, vibrant blue brush strokes, a simple, powerful declaration. He didn't have wings. He had faith. Reporters, of course, kept asking about the boy. Where is he now? Is he real? What was his name? Each time, Elijah gave the same unwavering answer. His name is Isaiah. I don't know where he is, but I know where he was when it mattered. A few laughed, dismissing it as folklore, a charming but implausible tale. But a few, a precious few, wiped their eyes because they believed. And sometimes belief changes more than facts ever could. One evening, Amara and Elijah took a walk through their old neighborhood. Amara wore her purple rain boots, even though it hadn't rained in days. "It's just in case," she explained, a knowing twinkle in her eye. "Isaiah told me the best surprises happen when you're ready for them." They stopped at a quiet street corner, near the closed-down train station. There, beneath a broken street lamp, sat an old man playing a harmonica, its mournful notes weaving through the air. A cardboard sign rested at his feet. It read, "You're not lost, you're just not finished yet." Amara gasped, her eyes wide. "Daddy, look." Elijah blinked, then walked over. The man smiled through a grizzled beard, his fingers calloused, his clothes worn. "Where'd you get that phrase?" Elijah asked gently. The man shrugged. "Heard it from a little boy years ago. Said he traveled light, only carried truth. Used to play music with me till one day he just vanished." "Was his name Isaiah?" Amara asked, her voice hushed with wonder. The man's eyes sparkled. "Well, now that was what he said, wasn't it?" Amara turned to Elijah, grinning wide, a radiant light in her face. "He's still out there, Daddy." Elijah felt something warm bloom in his chest. "Yeah, I think he is." That night, Amara couldn't sleep. She stood by her bedroom window, staring at the moon, a silent communion with the vastness of the night. Elijah walked in and sat beside her. "You okay, baby?" "I was thinking," she said, hugging her stuffed giraffe close. "What if Isaiah finds another little girl who's lost? And what if she's scared like I was?" Elijah brushed her hair back, a tender gesture of protection. "Then I hope someone is singing nearby." She nodded solemnly. "We should teach the world to sing," she declared. Elijah smiled. "You want to do that?" "Yes, like you taught me, but bigger. Like everywhere. On the internet, on YouTube, on rooftops, in the middle of the night when people feel the most alone." Elijah hugged her close, a profound joy filling him. "Then we'll do it." And they did. They recorded Amara's story, her drawings, her laughter, her sweet, clear voice. Elijah recorded songs from the notebook he'd used in the hospital, raw, honest melodies trembling with love. They called the channel Isaiah's Echo. In 2 weeks it reached 2 million views. In 4 months they received over 10,000 messages from ICU beds, from broken homes, from orphanages, prison cells, lonely dorm rooms. Each one ended the same way. "I thought I was lost, but now I think maybe I'm just not finished yet." On the 1-year anniversary of her waking, Amara stood on a small stage at the Voices at Dawn Center. She held a microphone with both hands, her knees trembled, but her voice did not. She sang the song Isaiah had taught her, her voice a pure, strong beacon of hope. And as she finished, Elijah noticed a boy sitting in the back row. Barefoot, dusty coat, soft smile. Their eyes met, a profound connection across the distance, and then he was gone. No applause, no sound, just faith, the final, enduring note. Miracles aren't always thunder and lightning, my lord. Sometimes, They're the dirt under your nails and stories at bedtime. Sometimes they're the voice of a father rediscovering his song, or a little girl's hand reaching through the dark, or a black boy no one believes in, laughing at the impossible until it isn't impossible anymore. Because the truth is, he didn't wake her up. He reminded the world. And that echo, born from quiet faith and profound love, continues to resonate, forever changing the song of those who listen.